Yeah,
Is this on?
he's just going to turn it up.
Thank you. My question, I don't know why I thought about this a few months ago, even before I knew I was going to come here, was if God is so loving and so giving, why did he sacrifice his only son? Why did he send him to such a horrid death? That was my question.
Okay, so the Christian religious viewpoint was that I was the only begotten Son of God, and as a result of my purity, God purposefully sacrificed me in order to obtain the redemption of the human race through my death. Or, to be frank, they often call it through my blood. My blood had to be spilled in order for others of humanity to be saved. Now, that seems very similar to this, doesn't it? In reality, can you see that straight away? It's very similar to this whole concept of what God is. Secondly, let me just use a bit of logic with this. That means that I had to die when I came to earth in the first century, according to this theory. I had to die. If I had to die, then why couldn't God kill me directly? Oh, and then we go, but if God did that, then God would be bad. So what God needed now was somebody else to kill me. So God needed Pilate and Herod to sentence me, and then Pilate to actually kill me. So why aren't Pilate and Herod just as important in the whole process as I am? If they're involved in the saving of the human race and God needed them to do it. Right? How come they get condemned and I get so-called glory for taking this job on of redeeming the human race through my blood? And how is it that they get condemned when I needed them to kill me before it could all happen? Does that make much sense to you in terms of... There's no logic in the whole thing, is there, when you think about it? But even if there is some logic in the whole thing, the biggest reason why it can't be true is because it basically is portraying God as a God who would sacrifice one child for the benefit of all the other children. Now, let me put to you, you have 5 children. One of your children is especially nice. They're always pleasant, they're always kind, they're always loving to the other children, and the other children get pretty unruly at times. And at times they're just downright devious and nasty. And in fact, many of the times they attack that one child and want to beat him up or do other things to him, but still, like that one child still is quite kind and loving in its interactions with the other children. Now, as the parent, would it make sense to you that you would get that one child and punish it for the sins committed by the other 4 children? Would you do that? Surely you would even consider the opposite, wouldn't you? Which would be to reward the child who was more loving, and you would look at some other way of treating the children who were as loving, wouldn't you? You certainly wouldn't say to the other children, oh, it's okay what you do. I'm going to let you keep doing what you do, and all of the things that you do, I'm going to punish the nice child for. Now, none of us, logically, as humans, would even consider doing that. And yet, we say that's exactly what God is doing. That's what 1.5 billion Christians on this planet believe. That God done that. Something that they themselves would feel is absolutely abhorrent to do in their own life. They would never consider doing that to their own children. And yet they're saying that God did it with his children. That God chose one child, there's billions of children, and God chose one child to actually suffer for all the sins of the billions of children, which, by the way, must be quite a few sins, right? Now, it is neither logical nor loving to actually believe that that is true. Neither logical nor loving, nor does it portray the correct viewpoint of God. And yet we have 1.5 billion people on the planet, or more, who believe that with their whole heart, which is interesting, isn't it? The reason why they believe it within the whole heart is because of the dynamic
Sorry.
that we just wrote on the board.
Vigorous. Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's why they believe it, because their parents taught them that sacrifice was everything, taught them that sacrifice was love, taught them that demand of the parent, satisfying a demand of the parent is the loving action to take. The reality is that my death did nothing for the human race at all. It actually also destroyed the life in a lot of ways of my soulmate, and we were married. It harmed the life of my children and many of my friends. Not only that, it destroyed the opportunity we had 2,000 years ago to tell the truth in a far deeper way, or to demonstrate the truth physically. So the reality is that my death accomplished only one thing. And you know what that was? It allowed me to prove to the people who were listening to me that death is not real. That's all it accomplished. Nothing else. That make sense?
Thank you.
That's all it accomplished. And the only way it accomplished that was because I had a desire to demonstrate that after I died, so I materialised a human form in a number of different times and appeared to many of them after my death. That's the only reason why it accomplished that. But aside from that, it didn't save anybody. In fact, it was my words when I was alive that had the potential to save people, not my death. And in fact, if you look at all the words in the Bible, logically, you will see that I was saying to people that they could be saved while I was still alive. Right? The reality is that every single person on the planet is not saved through the death of another, or the death of another thing, even. So no sacrifice. So you see a lot of religions still sacrificing animals for the sake of their religion, for example. It doesn't save anything. It doesn't save ourselves. It doesn't save the animals. Obviously suffer, and it gives us no true conception of God. All of which is like very damaging when you think about it. Yeah. Does that make sense to everyone? So the whole Christian proposition that one person died to save the others is actually based upon very unloving behaviour that we as a human race accept because of how we've been trained to accept it by our parents generally. And so we not only accept it by our parents, but we also accept it in religion as a basic principle, when in reality, from God's perspective, that doesn't exist.